Ouch! Ah, ah. Wow. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here. I had a dream. I had a fantasy. I was fearful. I had a vision. These words very often begin the narrative of aspiring young chefs and successful chefs, and they're always thrilling to hear. It always really moves me, especially when, as we just heard from Tatiana, it ends with this incredible success story. But what about the diner, the pesky guest? What about their dreams and aspirations and fantasies? So I was very excited when the wonderful Matt team invited me to speak from the other side of the table, to represent the diner and their dreams. But before I go into a little bit about my professional history and my impressions, I wanted to tell you about a dream that my mother had for most of her life. We come from the former Soviet Union, which means a country that now vanished from maps, which means we lived for the longest time without access to foreign travel or foreign cuisines, if you don't count socialist Bulgaria or Czechoslovakia, and even that was rare. So my mom had this dream, and I knew it from her face when she would sit on my bed, with this kind of sad, desperate eyes. She dreamt that she turned into a bird or a fly, and she flew over the border. No one asked her for documents. She escaped from the Iron Curtain, and she ended up in Paris. And my mom was a very cultured lady, she still is. She read Balzac, she read Proust, she dreamt of Paris, and she knew that she could never see Paris, because for a Soviet citizen it was impossible to travel. And here she is circling, as a bee or fly, she's circling over this beautiful cafe that is so achingly recognizable to her from literature and from painting. She smells some delicious smells. She sees people, sitting outside. She's desperate to be inside and to see what it's like. And at that point, my mother always woke up. On the wrong side of the door, woke up, behind the Iron Curtain, woke up knowing that she would never be able to experience what she fantasized so much about. And I remember watching my mother with great difficulty grind, the really, really tough, grisly goulash meat into these little meatballs. She'd float them in broth. It was very, very humble. And she would say, "Oh, this is potage printanière." Or she would get a can of tinned meat called tushonka that you all took to the dacha. And she would say, "I made an olla podrida. I read about it in Cervantes." "Oh, I made potafa." And I remember that these words, these names, filled us both with this just incredible romantic longing. When we completely ran out of money, which was on Sundays, because my mom just lived on the alimony, my mom would crack a couple of eggs into a skillet, and she would tell me some magical fairy tale about the king's chamber and golden eggs, and suddenly our drab, little apartment was transformed for me. And this is when I understand that cooking could really transfigure reality, that could transport you to a different place, that it could elevate us from our drab Soviet grind into a different reality. And I often wonder whether I became a food writer because or despite of my socialist childhood. Anyway, back to restaurants. One of my first assignments was going around, it was in the mid-90s, was going around French three-star restaurants to see, the state of French cuisine. And our first stop was a very famous restaurant in Paris, run by a very famous chef who's still very famous. And we arrived there, and the lady at the reception kind of rattled her pearls and said, "Oh, we canceled your reservation because you weren't staying at a hotel, because we were staying in some bad arrondissement with relatives of friends." But she said, "Okay, we'll have a table for you, follow us." And we got kind of stuck in this horrible corner space next to the bathroom. And then we encountered the smirking sommelier. And the smirking sommelier sold us some horrible, expensive bottle of wine, which he would not come to replenish. But when I reached for the wine, I almost got this. And then the pigeon arrived. Of course, I wanted it rare. I just remember, this blood gushed out onto some kind of potato. And here I was, at the plate full of blood, not being able to pour my own wine. There was this distinct feeling that we were trespassing. The rest of the adventure went, in the same fashion. Although there were moments of absolute brilliance, I'm still so grateful that I got to taste Freddy Girardet's cooking before he retired. There was, adventure foraging with Mark Vera. But I came out of this month-long thing understanding very distinctly what cooking should not be, because the whole thing was like an exercise in being trapped. I realized that cooking, cannot be the sort of fossilized, over-codified, over-bureaucratized ritual that, leaves the diner essentially victimized by the chef's ego and by all the protocol. And then in 1995, I went on an assignment in Catalonia. And people started whispering to me about this incredible chef that just got 3 stars. So finally, someone made a reservation, and it was El Bulli. It was lunch. It was completely empty, other than another journalist who was there. That was 95. And people often ask me what it was like to eat at El Bulli, back in those early days. And all I can say, it was really life-changing. I'm not going to talk about the dishes and the techniques, because these are well documented, and Albert is right here. But it made me appreciate and understand that there could be another whole dimension of cooking, that cooking could have the polemical force, the iconoclastic energy, the wild creativity of a real cultural avant-garde. And soon, it spread all over Spain. You could go to Asturias, or you could go to the Bundaks in Andalusia and taste a deconstructed gazpacho, or a trompe-l'oeil fabada. It was absolutely thrilling. And there was this thing, that while it radically, radically altered what was on your plate, it did not change the relationship between the kitchen and the diner. If anything, it made the experience more authoritarian, even though it was in a fun way. Even when the cuisine was brilliant and witty, it came with explanations. Inhale it through your nose, exhale it through your ear, catch it midway, cut it with a knife in the air. You give it exactly 3 seconds. And the other thing, like every avant-garde art, which is difficult, it required this incredible cognitive engagement. You had to concentrate. So again, there was a sense of feeling kind of trapped. And it also, the whole kind of publicity of Ferran as the mad genius, even though he's the sanest person you ever meet, it legitimized the figure of chef as auteur, as artiste, and it gave even more power, in a sense, to the kitchen. And the diner, it expected engagement from the diner, and the engagement was one way. You were supposed to engage with the food, but what about you? So I began to seek different kinds of experience, and it's a sort of experience that I still really love. It's going, for Sunday lunch to sort of a neo-traditional bourgeois restaurant somewhere in Spain and in Italy, where the maitre d' or the chef helps you create the fantasy as you go along, where you negotiate for real, where you say, oh, the anchovies just arrived. Oh, how about a couple of anchovies? Oh, how about 1.5 portion of pasta, and maybe another 1 portion of ravioli just for the table. And then he says, well, I think it's too much. Well, maybe just a tagliatina or some little thing, followed by a salad. So the kind of process of creating your own meal, I just find incredibly pleasurable. Well, fine dining is in a difficult place right now. People, clients, those pesky clients are, defecting to dives, to food trucks, because, eating at the food truck, surrounded by other people, creates a sense of community. Chefs spend a lot of time and a lot of calibrations and calculations before opening the restaurant. They try to figure out, the best kind of music. They spend a lot of effort into the logo, how the menu reads, the typeface, the wine list, everything. But in all these calibrations, I feel that what gets forgotten is what Tatiana just said so beautifully, is that the point of cooking is to nourish, to feed. It is to create a fantasy of a life that is better than in reality, where everyone, as my friend Daniel Patterson once said, where everyone is happy to see you, where everything tastes better than it should in real life, where everything is perfect, and whether it's a modest restaurant or an ambitious one. And we need ambitious restaurants more than ever, because a great restaurant sets an example. A great restaurant is a laboratory from which ideas and techniques trickle down to more casual places. A great restaurant, a great chef like Rene or Alex, they create national cuisines. They inspire other young chefs. It is really important not to lose the experience. But what I would like to urge all the young chefs, all the young talents, is to leave just a little room in their fantasy for the diner. And it's a very humble proposal. And finally, I want to end with the fantasy that I myself had when I just was in Modena doing a piece with Massimo Bottura, the brilliant Massimo from Osteria Francescana. It was Saturday night. The place was completely booked out. There's no way I could get a table. And I was hungry and tired, and it was raining outside. And Massimo said, just come into the kitchen, and at least I'll show you a little bit of what I was doing. So we were just kind of standing there like this, squeezed. There was no space. Everyone was just like rushing through. And Massimo would appear every once in a while with a tablespoon or a little plate of something he had just created. And it was just like, it would go like this. You taste the thing. And there was just absolute visceral, primal thrill in being actually fed by a great chef. It kind of made me, without any intermediaries, without any kind of bureaucracy, without the maitre d' and the sommelier and the whole thing, it really made me reconnect with restaurant cooking in the most incredible way. And I said to Massimo, and I said to myself, wow, wouldn't that be amazing if restaurants like Francescana, like Noma, restaurants that are really expensive for average people, restaurants where it's really hard to get reservation, if they would just put a little bench in a back somewhere and maybe sell tickets, to students, to young chefs, to people who otherwise, have no access, and just bring up, 5, 6 little dishes at a time for people to have. I know, I'm sure it's logistically impossible. And I'm sure the chefs would howl and protest, but I can't get the idea out of my mind. And so I thank you for your time.